Welcome to the Drivable Podcast. I'm Ali Akbarian and over there is Brad Williams. Today we are talking about the progression of MS and driving from no controls to driving from your wheelchair with hand controls with Christine Umapathysivam, who has worked with multiple key positions as an advisor. She previously worked for the MS Society and she's now on the CEO of Cystic Fibrosis SA. So Brad, this sounds like we're going to have a great chat. Are you ready to chat with Christine?
Yeah, I can't wait for this one either. We've had so many great interviews lately, and this one's going to be another one. So let's get going.
Let's do it.
Welcome to the Drive Able podcast, where each episode you get to listen to two of Australia's leading professionals in the area of driving and community mobility for people with disabilities. In each episode, they interview drivers, carers, and industry experts and share the insider's guide to driving with a disability. Here are your hosts, Brad and Ollie.
Hi, everybody. I'm really excited to get into today's interview. But before we get started, a shout out to our sponsors that make this show possible, Mobility Engineering and Williams OT. This show takes a lot of time and a lot of money to put together. And we just want to say thanks to our sponsors for helping you bring this podcast today. And today we have Christine. Christine, thanks very much for joining us. How are you today?
Excellent. Thanks, Brad.
That's good. We're going to start with the question that we have for everybody at the start is just to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your disability.
Oh, thanks, Brad. Well, my name's Christine and I have MS. I'm currently working as the CEO for Cystic Fibrosis SA. I was probably diagnosed with MS, seems a long time ago now, but maybe 2013, 14, when I was in my early 40s. At first, it started off as just, tingling feet and tingling hands. And then over the ensuing 20 years has sort of progressed to the point where now I'm mobilized with a wheelchair.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was faced with the opportunity, well, mostly driven by me, I guess, to purchase a vehicle and have it modified with the support of the NDIS, which I have done, and probably the best thing that I have ever done, really, insofar as independence is a very big thing for me. I like to be able to go to work when I want to go to work. I like to be able to do what I want to do when I want to do it. And I'm really not keen on waiting for somebody else to have to transport me, which was getting to be where the situation was going. I had a different power chair, and once I got to work, it was okay. But I had to wait for someone to come pick me up. I had to wait for them to come and get it out the back of my car. I had to wait for me to transfer and them to take the car away. And then I had to time my leaving at the end of the day, not when the work was done, but the prearranged time that I had to be downstairs because the person that was coming to pick me up would pull up there at a particular time. I wasn't really very keen on that. I put up for you that whilst the car was being modified, but always knew that my end goal was to want to do something and just get in the car and do it pretty much just like everybody else.
Can we just unpack that a little bit? So you were adjusting to your disability by asking people to help you with your transport needs. So what I'm getting from what you're saying there is that you had a wheelchair in the back of the car, but you couldn't get it out yourself, and you had to organize other staff of where you're working to come and get it out of the car to help you get in and out of the building. Is that right?
Initially, when I had a manual car, I would kind of struggle around the back, transfer to my legs and a frame, and struggle around the back and pull out the manual wheelchair. But once it became a power chair, I didn't have staff doing that. I just paid someone as a support worker to come morning and night and help me do the transport.
Right. So what kind of car did you have at that point to be able to get wheelchairs in and out and so forth?
It was the super cute Nissan Cube. And what I had done is I had removed the back seat to create just a big space. It already had a manual ramp installed, so I just kept that there, but took out everything beyond the driver's and passenger seat, and used that space as really storage for the wheelchair.
A little mini panel van.
Pretty much.
Yep.
Yeah, they're a great car, the Nissan Cubes. I mean, as a wheelchair, sometimes they're used a little bit in the industry as a wheelchair accessible vehicle, which is more for children. But they're a very versatile car. We used to have one at our company, actually. It's a bit of a company runaround, and it was even though it's a really small car, it's really, really versatile. It's got a lot of space, and it's good to drive in as well. So that's pretty cool.
It's got a lot of hidden technology also.
Yeah. It's,
for the age of the car. The other thing, I of course, is it was incredibly cheap to run.
Yeah. Did you have any hand controls or anything, or
no, nothing?
So you just had someone to help with just the sort of
just pulling the wheelchair in and out.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I was still using my feet for just regular foot pedals, really.
And the Cube had a ramp, so they were just bringing it in and out of the ramp. They weren't actually manually handling it.
Yeah, they were just rolling it up the ramp and bringing it down the ramp, and then bringing it around to me at the door, the driver's door. I would drive.
Yeah.
Because I always drive.
And then when you got home, the carer or the support worker would meet you at home to do it all again? Is that?
No, they would pick me up here. I would go down in my wheelchair. They would pick me up here. I'd transfer to the driver's seat, and then they would put the wheelchair at the back, and together we would drive home.
Okay.
And then when we got home, he would take the wheelchair out of the back, put it around the side so that I could then go into my house.
And then how did they get back to where they were? To
their car was parked at my house.
Okay. Sounds like a lot of hard work and a lot of organizing, and something that would have chewed into a massive chunk of your day. Nowadays, what's happened since then? So that was the old way of transporting. What's happened? Yeah. Where are we up to now?
Just quickly, before we get into that, just to interject, was the support worker part of NDIS?
Yes, he was.
Yeah. Okay. So that's it's cool.
So now it looks like. What does it look like now?
So now in the morning, I transfer off of a frame into the wheelchair. I have an automated back door. I go down the ramp that's been installed, down the driveway to the back of the car, open up the car, which provides me with a remote control ramp that comes down. I go up that, scoot through the middle of the car, because currently I've got a Volkswagen minivan, so plenty of space to do that. Then roll forward, lock in, and using hand controls, drive my car.
So you use your wheelchair right through to the driving position and lock into place and use hand controls from there.
That's correct. And then I drive to work. I'm fortunate that I have my own dedicated car park, so that's pretty easy, into the ABC. And then the ABC building is what I would consider fully automated. So I go through the front door with my pass, and I go into the lift up to the third floor. And when I get to the third floor, one door in the lobby of the lift is also automated. I can access it with my swipe card, so I do. And then I'm into my office.
Yeah.
Should I want, however, to visit the ladies, they are also fully automated.
That's right. We could have another podcast about that one, but we'll bring it back to driving. That just sounds completely different. And how does that rate for you? Where has it made a difference to your life? Not relying on I'm assuming the answer is yes, but how significant is that change in regards to that independence and not relying on support staff to come and help you with your transfers?
It's everything. It's kind of like my car is an extension of the wheelchair insofar as it enables me to just do anything. I can go visit friends, I can go out for lunch, I can go to the shop just because, shops are good. And I don't have to sync my day to anybody else's. I just do it when it suits me. And that does suit me to be able to do whatever I need to do. So tomorrow I've got to go into the city before I come here. I'll just go in the car, park it. The other thing too is because my access to my car is through the rear door, although if there's a disabled park, I would probably park there. If there's just a regular park, and it's particularly if it's angle parking, I'm coming out of the back, so I actually don't care about anything on the sides, which I think is a really good thing, because you just go out the back, and then you proceed with your business, whatever it is you're doing. My wheelchair also is a bit handy insofar as it can go a bit cross country. Unless you're in a wheelchair, I think you don't pay much attention to floor surfaces. But when you're in a wheelchair, floor surfaces are everything. And thank you to Woolworths for making sure theirs are always flat. And universally across their shops, I have to say. So therefore, I go there and spend my money. But things like, oh, no, our building is accessible, no problem, just come in the side door. Oh, by the way, our car park is loose gravel. Wheelchairs don't like loose gravel that much. Their wheels just spin, you can get no traction. But unless you're worried about that, or unless you, know to look for that, you just don't even see it. And we've only got a tiniest, weeniest step at the front door. Yeah, well, a tiny, weeniest step at the front door may be the difference of me going in or not.
Yeah.
So, I just feel like unless you have a reason to know and understand what some of the access barriers might be, people just don't see them. They don't really understand.
Yeah.
They don't understand.
What kind of chair are you using that helps with that?
Well, I don't know if it's the chair or whether it's how it's supposed to be used, but I just power on. So I just turn up the speed and power on through the grass over the gravel and hope for the best. And then if I get stuck, I'm just going to, I always make sure I've got the phone number of whoever's organising it to tell them they've got a problem. It's me. I'm stuck in their car park.
Yeah.
But they've got the problem. I don't.
You've got a centre drive wheelchair, is that right? You've got centre wheel, driving wheel, or is it the driving wheels at the back of your power wheelchair?
At the back, I think.
Yeah.
Come on, that's a bit technical, Brad.
All right. We'll bring it back to the car. We'll bring it back to the car.
How about I tell you it's red?
Okay, red. But that makes it go faster. That's what we need to know.
How do you lock it into what kind of dock are you using to lock it in? I'm guessing you're using a dock.
Yes, the brand name is Dahl, D-A-H-L, and it's kind of like a triangle. And I just need to get over the pin that's in the middle of that triangle. And if you get it just the right position, it goes cluck clunk. Yeah. Otherwise, it doesn't, and therefore you don't lock in. Yeah. So you have to try again.
How do you find using that, getting on and off that? Is it relatively easy?
I'm getting better at it. I find that if I'm just by myself and I'm just doing my regular stuff, I have no troubles at all. But if there's someone there watching me, I'm obviously just off center or whatever it is, and I have to do it, I don't know, half a dozen times before I get it in.
Yeah.
But if I'm just by myself, I don't really have that much problem. And getting off the lock is easy. I just push a button and it releases it and I can go backwards. But in my car, everything has to be turned off in the right sequence so that I can go from the locked position to free to move position. So that's been one of my lessons along the way.
Is it has the floor of your Volkswagen been modified and lowered to accommodate for? Yeah.
Yes, it has.
What was the company that did that one?
I had I sent my van to Victoria to Access Mobility.
Yep.
And my understanding, I don't even like to think of it because it was a brand new car, but my understanding is they cut the floor and lowered it so that I could actually drive in and have head clearance.
Yep.
And then They did some nifty things too, though, for the passenger side. So I have 2 passenger seats, one behind the other, next door to me at the moment. And for the front passenger, there is like a false floor, so that their feet are not just dangling the extra length because of the lowered floor. They've got like a platform to put their feet on more comfortably. So I thought that was kind of a thoughtful addition to just doing the modifications for me.
Yeah. And then, the floor was lowered. You've got a passenger seat and a rear passenger seat on the passenger side, and you drive into the driving position, and you've mentioned that you're driving with hand controls. What kind of hand controls are you driving with, Christine?
It's really cool, actually, because what happens with my hand controls is I have a right-hand spinner knob, which I love. And then on the left-hand side, I control both the brake and the acceleration with my left hand. And the acceleration, I think, is probably one of the coolest things about the car, because it's just like a cotton reel on a rod, and I just squeeze it with my fingers. However, because I went on a long trip over the weekend, I'm now in love with cruise control as well.
Utilizing that is a godsend for people with hand controls and people using their feet as well. But cruise control can certainly take a whole lot of fatigue out of things. And
Exactly.
when you're using hand controls, being able to put that second hand on the steering wheel for those long trips can really save your shoulders.
I didn't do that. I just put it on cruise control and kept going with my one hand. But what I found, 2 things. Well, first of all, you do have the fatigue to your arm and hand if you're trying to control the accelerator using a couple of fingers. But also, as your hand gets tired, you kind of drop off the speed that you're doing because your hand's releasing. And it means that for the overall long trip, you kind of take up more time. So if you can set the cruise control to a standard regulated speed, you've got more chance of getting there in the reasonable time frame.
So you're using your left arm, did you say, for the hand control?
Yes.
What hand control is that? The left, because they're more commonly people are using their right. So the left is the more unique ones. Which one is that?
You
know?
I'm not sure of the brand name of it. Bloody effective.
How do you accelerate? How do you accelerate? What action do you do to actually accelerate?
I use my pointing finger and my thumb to draw the accelerator into my left hand, and then I release the same thing. But I also use my third finger as a bit of a cushioning of the acceleration. But let me tell you, the other feature that's like super cool, I think, is behind the knob that is the brake, there are a number of buttons. They control things like the lights, the windscreen wipers, I think high and low beams or something. But in the middle, there's like a silver button. And when you get on the freeway, you can push that silver button and like double your speed. So all of a sudden you're going at 80 k's, because that's probably the maximum that your van can manage. But you're on the freeway, so you want to be going along with the rest of the traffic. So you push the button and it kind of goes whoosh. And all of a sudden, I call it hyperspeed, really. And at that point in time, I'm here to tell you that I really feel like I need to paint some flames on my van so that it looks, equally fast and cool.
Well, if there's anyone out there listening that wants to donate some, flame painting to Christine's car, let us know.
Well, that's it. I mean, the colour of my van is a sort of a bronzy colour, and I'm thinking of some flames, that come out the back would kind of give other drivers a kind of a bit of a nudge.
We get quite a few people come to us, Christine, and go, I don't want to drive a big van. I'm scared of driving a big car. Is that, you've gone from a Cube to a Volkswagen multivan. What was that like for you in regards to size?
So although I've had the van since last June. It was away in Victoria for at least 6 months getting modified. Having said that, when I first gave it to Automobility, they said, probably before Christmas. I don't know about you, but any experience I've had with probably before Christmas means, you're not getting it till later. But they were true to their word, and they were finished their work around about the 23rd of December. So that was all good. And then we just had to wait for the transport to go back and bring it to me. So actually, I've had it for about 6 months and still really learning, not only about where all the controls are and, how to use them, but also just understanding how the car responds and how it moves and what sort of spaces that you need. And you definitely are aware that you're driving a bigger vehicle. You're higher for a start, so you can see a lot more. It's different, but I don't think it's particularly scary or worrisome. And I don't think I would hesitate again to move into a van. I think it has other advantages too, because I always travel with a portable ramp.
Mm-hmm.
I always travel with a walking frame, like a Zimmer frame. They're all folded up and flat and everything, but I've got a place to store them in the back of the van. They don't have to bother anybody. They can just stay there until, in fact, we all realise the step at the front door, in fact, is a step and it's too big, and we can put the ramp there because we've got a portable ramp. So I come prepared. I come prepared for getting to where I want to be and doing what I want to do. I think relies on you having just the right equipment. I think it takes experience to understand what's the right equipment for you. But I think that it's also, I feel, my responsibility to make sure I've got that equipment so that I can do what I want to do.
Yeah, it's a shame that you have to on occasions, I'm sure, but it's a really good tip for other new wheelchair users that are transferring to a wheelchair. That taking a ramp with you can potentially open up where you want to get to and so forth.
You can get the little fold-up ones. They just go flat, and you just put them. Like I've got
deck pack ramp.
No, what do you call those things? They're like compartments on each side to put stuff in.
Yeah, so just to explain what Christine's saying there, she's coming in through the rear in a lowered floor, and near the wheel arches at the back of the van, there's compartments that you can put bits and pieces into, whether it's the handbag or shopping bags, or in this case, a little portable ramp, or the frame as well, to keep them stable so they don't fall out and fall onto the floor and get in the way when you're getting in and out of the car in your wheelchair.
Yeah.
I've got a really important question. MS is one of the trickier, from my point of view as an OT, this is, by the way, one of the trickier diagnosis to work with the NDIS, because it's a progressive condition where it's hard to determine when actual aids are needed, and preempting what's needed for the next 8 years when we're talking about vehicle modifications. Christine, how did you take the leap from no hand controls and no wheelchair access through to needing hand controls and wheelchair access? What were the triggers for you to do that? Was it just we've talked about the assistance of carers helping you with getting in and out. I can see that one, but what about the hand controls more specifically? How did you know when you needed hand controls, or was it the OT that made it clear for you?
If I go back to what the car means to me, it means my independence. So I was kind of considering an 8-year window, looking forward, based on the 20 or so years I've had of experience with MS. I think for people with MS, one of the really challenging things to come to grips with, and it takes a while, is the uncertainty that it presents to you about your future. You see people with MS walking around, you wouldn't even know they've got MS, and then you see people with MS who are severely impacted and confined to a wheelchair, and it's just because MS is a condition that plays out differently for different people. And so there's that uncertainty, you know, am I going to be able to work long enough to educate my children? Am I going to be able to work long enough to keep myself satisfied? You know, am I going to be able to do these things in 2 to 5 years? So I thought about 8 years, and I thought, oh, well, look, I really don't know what's going to happen with my legs. So I opted to say, let's talk about hand controls so that I could future-proof myself, I guess.
Yep.
If the hand controls had sat there and done nothing for another 3 years, I wouldn't care. I would be happy to just drive. But then I thought, well, probably you need a bit of training on how to use these things, because I had no idea at all about how they worked. I had them there in the car. I had them installed in the car, but that was really about a day in the future. But I thought, well, I don't know how to use these things. So I then started to do some driving lessons with the assistance of an OT, and start to learn about driving. And can I just say, if you're a driver and you've got a driver's license and you're my age, you've been driving for a long time using your feet, you don't think when you get in the car, oh, I'll just, you know, engage the clutch and I'll just brake now, or I need to accelerate. You don't think that at all. You just do it automatically. But if you cast your mind back to when you're 16 and you're learning to drive for the first time, you know, the shock that you get when the car actually moves, and the fact that you're thinking, oh my God, I've got so many things to think about. Do I indicate, put the clutch in, take this brake now? Should I brake before the curb? Should I go round, you know, on with the clutch pushed in? You know, you've got lots and lots and lots. Oh, by the way, I forgot to indicate, you know, you got lots of things to think about. It's a little bit like that, I think. You know, I would sit there in the van and I'm kind of thinking, oh, right, I need to reverse. Now, how do I actually do that? Oh, that's right, I have to put this on, put the lock on whilst I change gears, and I have to then slowly start to go backwards. But at the beginning, it was a lot of brain work to actually just even get to the point where your car was moving, let alone feeling like you had control of the car. And as you've said, it's a big car, so you want to have control of the car. So it was an active decision on my behalf. If I'm going to have the hand controls there, I'm going to learn to use them so that in the future, if I need to use them, I can. However, the sting in the tail for the licensing, and by the way, I don't think the licensing people have got their act together in any form, really. They can't work out whether you've had this license for, you know, forever. It's just a Class C license, and oh yeah, no, you can still drive on that whilst you're learning hand controls, or oh, can you practice your hand? You know, you can't practice your hand controls unless you've got an instructor with you, etc., etc. So there were lots of things to consider that were not helpful. So what I did find out though was once your license has been changed to include the provision for use of hand controls, you're locked into that. You can't go on using your foot controls. You have to actually kind of move your brain to just always using the hand controls. And that took some doing, I have to say. But then I just made a decision for myself that, you know what, cold turkey, today I'm going to start just using the hand controls just by themselves. That's all I'm going to use. So whilst I was learning about hand controls, I was also independently just practicing by just taking myself for a quiet drive on Sunday morning, just for the use of the hand controls. So I just visit a friend that's a reasonable distance away on the quiet of a Sunday morning and have a cup of tea and then turn around and go back, just for the driving practice. You know, and then little by little, I kind of went, okay, well, I'm just going to drive to work. Now, I drive through town, so there's a reasonable amount of traffic, but I just decided, well, this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to use this van. So now I only use hand controls.
And can you see the benefit in that now with the hand controls only? Is it potentially safer than your feet, or?
I think so, probably. I think so, probably, because I have difficulty kind of lifting my leg from the quads. Are kind of weaker because I'm in the wheelchair all the time.
Yeah.
But I have difficulty lifting them, and I was starting to lift my leg by holding my knee and pulling it up.
You're not the only person with MS that comes to me that is doing that with their right hand under their right knee, assisting to get their foot from pedal to pedal. And just yesterday, I had a lady that said, "Oh no, that's too hard. I use my left foot on the brake instead of
I've
the
heard
accelerator."
people doing that too.
Yeah. So, but the hand controls allow it all to be in your arms, which are not affected by the MS.
Well, that's right, and it also gives you the feeling that you are in control. You've got your vehicle under control.
Seems safer, much safer.
Yeah, safer for me, but safer for other people too.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing too is in the event of having to stop suddenly, putting your hand underneath your leg and lifting your leg, I think adds seconds to the transfer. So it's just less responsive. And sometimes, when you're driving, you need to be responsive. And I think other drivers on the road should expect that you're responsive. There is just one more thing I want to comment on. I exit from the back of my car, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that means I need about 3 meters on the other side of my car to come out of my car.
Yep.
It says that on the back of the door. Please don't park within 3 meters of this van that somebody needs to access. However, from time to time, I've been blocked in by somebody parked right up against my back. I can't open the door. Or I've parked the car and I've gone off. Someone's parked very close behind me. And when I come back, I'm thinking, I can't even get in my car. So I have words for that, but perhaps not on this forum.
Don't know what the rating is for our podcast, whether it's M or PG or I don't know. I'm not sure.
I think we should just keep it general. I do really like to be there when the driver returns and just sit there as if I've been sitting there for hours and just say, I can't get in my car because you're in my way. But now I've kind of taken more control of that and I park more defensively.
Mm-hmm.
So I park with either on the corner of a road so that nobody's going to come park behind me. Like I'm in the last spot. Mm-hmm. And I make my 3 meters for myself, and I just get over the fact that might take me into the next park. I might take up 2 parks. I don't care. I need the 3 meters, and so I actively look for parking opportunities where I have that space behind me. If it's parallel parking in particular. If it's angle parking, well, there's no problem. I can just come out into the road. Mm-hmm. That's a tip, I think, is to always think about, well, how am I going to get out? How am I going to get back in? And how am I going to defend those 3 meters to stop somebody parking there? Because, as I said earlier, if they don't have the disability, they just don't understand that you need that space.
I'm imagining on a 40-degree day in the middle of a South Australian summer and you're waiting to try and get into your car, someone with MS would really struggle through that.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And with the heat sensitivity that comes with it. I think the answer to that is go and have lunch and come back.
Okay, get yourself a cold drink.
Unfortunately, sometimes you can do that and come back and another car's chosen to take the other place. So it doesn't always work it out, So, but anyway, that's one issue where you need to really think about how am I getting out of here and how am I preserving that space behind me to get out.
It's a really good tip. And look, we could talk to you forever, but we know our listeners like to listen to about 20 minutes. I think we've gone to 35. So sorry, listeners, if you needed to get somewhere and you really wanted to listen to this interview. Christine, thank you very much for this. But before we wind up, we've got one more question for you. But before we do that, we always thank our podcast sponsors, Williams OT and Mobility Engineering, for bringing you onto this podcast. And for this final question, We know that cars are more than getting from A to B, and you've mentioned that multiple times through this interview, but is there one case that you've used your car for that's really meaningful for you? Something that's maybe we don't know about or haven't heard about yet, but something that's really meaningful for using your car more than just getting from A to B?
Well, this is not very mysterious. I'm sure you would have picked it up through my conversation, and that is that I refer to my car as the independence machine, the freedom vehicle. So I don't know if you remember, there used to be an ad on the TV for bus drivers or something, or no, one of the insurance companies, and they'd say that song, I have to break free. I want to break free.
Yeah.
Well, I have that on my phone, and I just play it as loud as it will go as I go down to the shops. That's my way of getting there, just breaking free and having the capacity to do it. That's what my car means to me.
That's
Can
fantastic.
I finish with one last tip?
Sure.
And that is, when you go to get your car serviced, you need to tell the mechanic there's going to be no driver's seat.
Yeah.
Right. So I ring them up and I tell them there's no driver's seat. I can stay in the car and get it to where you want it to be, but I'm in a wheelchair, and I am the driver and I am the driver's seat. So, maybe what you might need to do is shift a seat from the back and bring it round. I don't know, you're Volkswagen, you'll sort it out. But I'm just warning you ahead of time, that's a bit of an issue. And when I went to pick it up, I go, so how did you go? They said, oh, we just stood up and drive. And I thought, yeah, probably I don't need to know that. But it's just a complication that you don't necessarily foresee before you're kind of faced with it. You kind of go, oh, goodness me.
Christine, we come back after this short little break and do our top 3 takeaways. We might mention that one because that is actually something that is very important for people to understand. Yeah. But before we do that, we just want to wind it up with yourself and say thank you so much for coming on. It's very easy to talk to you. We could go on forever, but I just want to say thanks very much for coming on board and sharing your story from no hand controls through to hand controls and driving through from your wheelchair. If there's anyone that wants to get in contact with you, is there a way that they can do that? Would it, through the show notes, be okay? Or is there a way that they can do that?
Oh, yeah, sure. They can probably email me.
We can provide that in the show notes if you're happy to do that.
Yeah, my home email is probably the best way to do it. I'm happy to talk to anybody who's kind of thinking about how can I be more mobile and what are some of the issues to think about.
Awesome.
And doing the thinking at the beginning, I think, is the key.
Yeah, if anyone wants to contact Christine, just contact us and we can put you guys in touch.
Yeah.
So.
Terrific.
Yep. Fantastic. Thanks again, Christine. We really appreciate your time and your energy today. And look, everybody stick around because Ali and I are going to do our top 3 takeaways. Christine, thanks very much.
All right, welcome back, everybody. You can hear me a lot clearer now. Thank you very much. Sorry, I had the bit of a microphone issue in the last recording. So we're back. In this section, we bring you our expert analysis and top 3 takeaways from the interview. This is where we provide our more than 30 years of joint experience in the industry, helping people with disabilities to drive and get out in the community in a safe and meaningful way. I guess one advantage of my microphone being out was that generally I like to talk a lot. So the guest got to do a lot more speaking this time, and I got to pick up a lot of lessons.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was really good. And
what's your first one then, Ali? What's your first takeaway? What did you pick up?
First takeaway was that kind of piece on thinking long term, and particularly it's really highlighted. I mean, we've spoken about this with other disabilities and so on, but it is really highlighted with MS because it's quite complicated. Like Christine said, it's first of all, MS is progressive and it's dynamic and filled with uncertainty. And what does NDIS want? They want certainty.
They want certainty. They want a clear cut. Here's the line in the sand. This is where you are right now. And with MS, one day can be completely different to the next day. Some days you've got all the energy in the world, and then the next day you're flat on a couch, unable to move. And yeah, as an OT, it's a big struggle to convince that now's the time. But she was saying that think long term and think about the next 8 years and what is it going to look like to the best of your ability. And it's not just how you are today versus tomorrow, but when we're talking about significant amounts of funding for vehicles, we've got to think 8 years, because that's what NDIS have highlighted in regards to the lifespan of vehicles, and that's what they're funding vehicle modifications for, is the lifespan of the car. And you've got to think lifespan of the car is 8 years, and what function am I going to have in 8 years? And how long's a piece of string? It's impossible to tell what the progression of your MS is going to be like, because everyone's different. We've highlighted that in this interview as well. But you've got to, I think, in this space that we're in, you've got to think worst case scenario. I think that's the best way to go. And she did that as well in regards to progressing to those hand controls as well. Let's do this now.
Yeah. And I think, as we've mentioned before, and there was she mentioned a couple of things about talking to other people or experiencing what other people with MS have done. In something like this, it is good to kind of build a bit of a community, and it really highlights speaking to that OT that knows what they're doing. You really can't go to an OT to assist you if they've never dealt with MS. You're just going to be, it's going to be really hard, because it is such a complicated thing. That's where the experience is going to really kick in, So, yeah.
So the thing is that she could drive with her feet. So that was what she was saying, is that she could drive with her feet, but she's probably driving fine with her feet. But taking that long-term approach, taking an active approach to safety. When we just did the interview with Darren Davis last week, and so make sure you go back and check out that interview in regards to making sure that you get home safe to your family, making sure other people get home safe to their family when you're out driving. It's a really good approach that she's taking, being proactive rather than reactive. Don't react to almost having an accident. Let's be proactive to avoid an accident. And I really applaud her for getting going before it's too late.
Yeah, and that kind of brings us to that second lesson around, well, first of all, the equipment, but leading to the equipment. It's interesting. The first scenario she had set up was like almost like a pseudo assistive technology thing with a support worker. So I thought that was pretty fascinating, that she was driving herself, but had a support worker coming with her and helping her with the transfers. And I guess as someone who sells transfer equipment from Mobility Engineering, I thought that was pretty actually impressive to me. It was actually pretty cool. I was like,
yes.
Wow.
So utilizing the NDIS to pay for a carer to come and meet you at work and help you with your transfers, and then get you home and help with the transfers at that end as well.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a unique way of trying to get your independence. And that's, we want to give a shout out to the NDIS for allowing that to happen, to be able to allow her to continue getting to and from work. I mean, that's huge, but geez, we want to also highlight, she calls it a freedom machine, I think it was. I just want to break free is what she plays in her car. She mentioned it as well.
Yeah.
That ability to go out for lunch.
That's
she
right.
Couldn't do that before unless the carer was pre-organized to come and take her out for lunch. And that's
and that was really what I thought was a huge highlight there. She was saying how much time she was wasting, even though it was a great kind of creative solution. Time, and we know with NDIS, money with support workers is endless. So, then one thing I thought she mentioned there, which, as I said to you in the break, sounded almost like a bit of a catch call for the NDIS. Doing what you want to do just takes the right equipment. And I thought that was a beautiful line. That's what Christine was saying. And that basically got rid of all of her lag times, all of her, mucking around and transferring in and out. Got a new car and just gets in and out. And, it's just, and funding wise, like we've said, some of this stuff is quite expensive, but it's a finite cost for 8 years. That NDIS support worker scenario, taking a lot of time, probably pushing a lot of independence, confidence out of you. And then also, just spending endless money. So great solution. But I just thought I wanted to highlight the fact that she had that original scenario approved by NDIS. And again, shout out to the concept and the beauty of NDIS, because it's a user chooses and whatever suits you as an individual, and the fact that she was able to kind of go, what, me as an individual suits me to get this person to help me and so on and so forth, rather than I need this equipment and the NDIS allows her to do that. I thought that was almost beautiful. That was a really nice scenario.
I hope some people at the NDIS are listening, because that's how the NDIS was designed. And I feel sometimes that we're losing that. I mean, we had a case this week where someone wanted side entry into a van and wanted to be able to have options for the future to be a front passenger, but then look at becoming a driver, but having the kids in the back. So a different setup to what Christine's having, but side entry. So she could have the 3 kids, 3 seats across the back for her kids, being able to access her kids, be able to get in and help her kids and create a 5-seater car. But the person at the NDIS is pushing for basically a Kia conversion. Pushing for a Kia conversion where she's a second row passenger, because their take on the scenario is that she'll be closer to her kids in the back row. I don't know how many parents choose to sit in the back seat with their kids without a disability. I know that's the further, I want to be as far away from that back seat
that's the worst
as
thing
I
possible.
can as an adult. I want to be in the front and let the chaos happen behind me. I hope that NDIS are listening to this and can see that everyone is individual and different individual needs need to be taken into account.
Yeah. And on the third lesson, I think was another one-liner that Christine mentioned, which I guess talks further on from that equipment piece, is the car is an extension of the wheelchair. And I thought, again, that was a beautiful one-liner, particularly when you're driving from the wheelchair. I guess I imagined you're able to go dock in, and then you've got like a bigger wheelchair that can take you everywhere. And I've never thought of it that way again as a person. I mean, for me, I thought this was pretty good for some marketing one-liners, definitely. But yeah, I again never thought of it like that, and it is really cool. Like when you are able to drive from the wheelchair, you just dock into a bigger wheelchair that's faster and it can take you to more places, and that's pretty awesome, and you get out where you are and you dock out and come out the back and go wherever you need to go. So that's really cool.
Yeah, no, that was a great one-liner. I loved it. It's an extension of your wheelchair. How good is that? And it's just a bigger one. It's undercover. It goes 100 k's an hour and can drive for 5 hours, like she did, where she was mentioning she's been for a long drive with cruise control. How cool is that? Just a couple of things. We when we said goodbye to Christine, we did some problem solving. The products that she's mentioning, so the car was converted by Auto Mobility, not Access Mobility. So Auto Mobility in Melbourne, shout out to them. And the hand control that she had is a Kiwi hand control on the left-hand side, and it's a thumb slider action. So she uses her thumb and forefinger to slide the controller. You might have the technical name for it, Ali.
Yeah, the CT12.
CT12, and on the back of it are the buttons for indicators, and then a rocket booster, her extra button to give her that extra power to get up the freeway and get to that 100 k's and beyond. So her rocket launcher for her flames. It was a great interview. She's got so much to share. She's able to give a real good insight to her life with MS and driving from her wheelchair. We really want to say thank you to her.
Thank you very much, Christine.
All right. So as we wind up, we just want to do a shout out to our sponsors again. This show takes a lot of production, and we want to thank Williams OT and Mobility Engineering. Williams OT is driver assessment and rehab, and they offer all the pieces of the puzzle to assist people with disabilities to be able to reach their driving and community mobility goals. And Mobility Engineering is a team of passionate and dedicated people focused on bringing Australia's largest range of suitable transport solutions for all walks of life. As we say in every episode, the advice provided in this podcast is general in nature. So if you've got any queries and you want to see what will work for you, make sure that you get in contact with your local OT and mobility dealer and set yourself up with a trial, because trials really do put you in the driver's seat. So that's it for this episode. Ali, thanks very much for your time. Christine, a shout out to you. Thank you very much as well. And we'll see you in the next episode.
See you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Drive Able podcast with Brad Williams and Ali Akbarian. If you like what you've heard, make sure you like, rate and subscribe. It really does make a massive difference. If you or anyone you know would like to share a story about driving with a disability, or you would like to get in contact, find the show notes, or find the resources mentioned in this episode, you can find us on Facebook. Just search @Drive Able Podcast for more information.